Blood Meridian is not Cormac McCarthy's best novel, and I know there is a sea of lit bros out there who love Blood Meridian. Some of you guys love it genuinely. Some of you guys have read nothing else by McCarthy except Blood Meridian, and I love Blood Meridian. But as you start to dive deeper into McCarthy's books and start to experience life more, I feel like Blood Meridian starts to fade a little bit because my God, Judge Holden is one of the most epic characters of all time. There are scenes like the Yuma attack, the Comanche scene, and so many other things that are great. And I live right near the border in Arizona and have visited countless locations that are in the book. And that's why I do Blood Meridian tour videos on the Cormac McCarthy course. Link down in the description below. But there is something missing at a soul level in Blood Meridian. And I think that's the whole point of it. Because yesterday in the Cormac McCarthy Substack, we had a discussion which is free for everyone to participate in. Every single day I post a Cormac McCarthy discussion that trumps anything you'll ever find in the Cormac McCarthy subreddit. And the question was, is Judge Holden a seducer or a prophet? And having read Blood Meridian probably for the 15th time about a month ago, I really don't take Judge Holden very seriously anymore. I understand his views on war and reality are congruent with what the Glanton was experiencing at that time. And as a lover of the Wild West and a person who understands the violent tendencies of man that still continue to this day, it's absolutely phenomenal stuff. But Blood Meridian, when I first read it, and it still does open my mind to the extent of human violence, to the depravity of man. But that's not hard to find. I can go watch a horror movie or anything that's kind of shock media and be able to experience that. And I would say that Blood Meridian has some of McCarthy's best prose. And like I said, I live where a lot of this takes place. And no one has ever written about the Southwest how Cormac does it in Blood Meridian. And Blood Meridian is a better book than most other books. When I look at this shelf behind me, when I look at a lot of Don DeLittle books or Haruki Murakami or even Pynchon, a lot of other people, Blood Meridian trumps a lot of those. So I'm not sitting here and saying it's a bad book. But what I am saying is that there are better Cormac McCarthy books. And today we are going to talk about two of them. Two from the different eras of his careers, the Southern era and the Western era. And the first book we'll talk about today is The Crossing, and that is the second installment of the Border trilogy. And why The Crossing is a better book than Blood Meridian is because, first of all, it has more cohesive literary elements. And I know that doesn't really matter. I'm not a very big fan of cohesive literary elements and don't think you need them. And Cormac has shown us that. But The Crossing does have over 15,000 more words than Blood Meridian, and it has complete arcs of characterization, plot, themes, and even kind of the mood of the story. And when I look at those elements in Blood Meridian, Judge Holden is like dominating the room. The kid has minor characterization, and a couple other characters do also. And we have kind of this wild band of characters, and they sometimes tell stories, and it's all wonderful, but it doesn't really mean anything. We are just watching some nihilistic, fatalistic men going on a journey, and it's wonderful. But when we look, and spoiler alerts here, we look at Billy Parham starting off as this innocent man who has this environmental awakening with the wolf, tries to save the wolf, then gets to experience the depravity of, Chihuahuan or Sonoran culture and how they treat animals. And we treat animals the same way. But at that time, and still to this day, it is very extreme. When a jaguar comes into southern Arizona, and there's one over in Sierra Vista, Arizona right now in the Santa Rita Mountains, everyone goes crazy. I go hiking sometimes. I see people wearing shirts with the photo of the jaguar caught on the outdoor camera. Like we have this massive pride in it. But their photos come out all the time in northern Sonora and Chihuahua of people capturing jaguars and skinning them. I've even seen and heard reports of people skinning them alive or fighting them in dogfights. It's literally just like The Crossing, and it's all happening still in 2024. And that's not to say the dogfighting in Los Angeles or the illegal chicken fighting happening all around Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and everywhere else across the country isn't just as bad because they're all mammals with a consciousness. But there is this kind of slight difference in environmentalism. Anyway, so that wolf scene with the pregnant wolf dying and getting lanced and getting in this dogfight is in my opinion, worse than anything in Blood Meridian. If we want to talk about human beings sucking and getting emotional and witnessing violence, nothing churns my stomach more than that scene. When I have to reread The Crossing or decide to do it, I've skipped that whole section before. I wait until the wolf is dead. I've done that countless times while rereading The Crossing just because I can't handle it. There's nothing in Blood Meridian that makes me feel that way. And maybe I'm just a wuss and have a soft spot for animals, but that happening to a wolf is almost inconceivable in my mind. And Cormac brings it all to the table. He brings the beautiful nature scenes and the wolf feeling emotional and the connection and then the eventual death. And it's all written very beautifully. And there's Christian symbolism and other symbolism in all of it. It's not as layered as Blood Meridian. It doesn't have a mirroring system and Freemasonry and the tarot and astrology and all those other things that I personally love. But it speaks to my soul. It goes and strikes the heart of whoever is going to read it. Anyone who has read that section views society in a little bit less of a good light. Same can be said in terms of plot. Blood Meridian has a small plot. Kid joins the gang, gets hurt, keeps going with the gang. They're trying to make money. There's an eventual clash with the judge at the end. That is close to nothing. But in The Crossing, we have this young boy who's dreaming of something bigger. He has these deep dreams, this romanticization of a different area of reality. Speaking of animals, Griselda is here. And through every crossing, though, things get worse and worse. He crosses over, the wolf dies. When he crosses back, his parents are dead. When he goes down again, boy dies. When he comes back, he kind of moves into this deeper nihilism until he goes back and tries to recover Boyd's bones. And that whole saga with Billy and Boyd and him going back, and eventually that final scene, which is some of the best characterization. That is the deepest characterization of any Cormac McCarthy novel. The whole chain event starts because he takes the gun so that he can go save this wolf. And then at the end of the story, there's this dog that is, looking for attention and looking for love, and he shoos it away, and the novel ends with him weeping. With little to no interiority throughout the entire story, and being able to pull that off, Cormac does a masterpiece in characterization. And that's what we want to feel. We want to individuate. We want to go on the journey and feel something. And then with all the themes, because The Crossing feels a little bit Chaucerian, because Billy Boyd or whoever, there's like these random people that they meet and they tell these stories about God, and there's all these different archetypes that are happening. We're not dominated by Judge Holden's philosophy, which once again is great. This passive nihilistic scientific materialism that's just gone malignant and gone crazy. Feed it to me all day. I only enjoy that though because I've had a traumatic life and stuff has happened to me, but when push comes to shove and I'm looking at growth and what I want my family to experience and what I want them to think about and what I want the world to think about more, it's more embedded in The Crossing. And so let's now move on to the Southern works, because I made a video probably almost a year ago that was titled Blood Meridian vs. Suttree, and I pitted them against each other with all these different areas like style and nature scenes and characters, and Blood Meridian ended up winning in a tiebreaker. And after I posted it, I kind of looked back and I was like, man, I feel like Suttree should have won this, because first of all, there's no Judge Holden character, and second of all, the desert is an infinite landscape. As my boy Carlos Castaneda always talks about, the desert is where real mysticism and deep mysticism happens, because there's nothing out there. First of all, it's a crazy weather, but there's nothing for you to project your ego onto or to escape into. And so it sucks you in. It's such a beautiful thing. That's why stuff like places like Las Vegas exist, where I grew up, because the desert can be manipulated into anything, into a place where nuclear bombs are being dropped. And it's somewhat disregarded, but within that, it can reverberate back a ton of power. And that's what we're seeing in Blood Meridian. But Suttree is McCarthy's greatest use of nature prose in the Southern style. And I've spent some time in the South, but not that much. But McCarthy really refines what he was doing, because McCarthy started Suttree in 1958 and worked on it, I think, for 21 years. And so there's some prose in there that really feels like The Orchard Keeper, because when you read The Orchard Keeper, McCarthy is being very aggressive with his prose. It's honestly much different than he's written any other book in, because I think he was just letting himself loose and not really creating the persona that we now know him of. But there is some of that still in Suttree. And a lot of the symbolic layering that happens in Suttree was built over such a long time, and is different to Blood Meridian though, because in Blood Meridian we have this idea, this mirroring system of the middle meridian, and the meridian hitting the sun or whatever occult interpretation you want. And when the men ride in to Chihuahua, that's literally the exact middle of the novel. And that's after they get there and, have the big celebration and are rewarded. Everything from then on out is kind of downhill. But when we look at Suttree, it's not as cool or as big of a grand narrative. But what McCarthy is trying to do in Suttree is make this all a very personal experience. Showing us, as I talked about in my other video about isolation, this man's isolation, and giving us an autobiographical look into McCarthy's life. And is it as entertaining as Blood Meridian? I would say not, but the language is better. We get more from characters. And once again, as I was talking about earlier, there is a spirit to it. Something of the soul that I think was maybe lost by McCarthy while doing Blood Meridian, because he did live in the West for about 10 years when he finally published Blood Meridian. But he had spent, I think, close to 40 years in the South developing as a writer, as an author, and that was his pinnacle. And to make it even better, he moved to the Southwest and then used that change of scenery to look back at Knoxville and rework everything. And you see this a lot, actually. A lot of authors who are very regional, they go move somewhere a lot of the times for like a university program or because of their spouse. And when they look back, one of my favorites, someone who I actually think knew Cormac McCarthy, and I'll be making a video on this, one of my favorites, Leslie Marmon Silko. She grew up on the Laguna Pueblo Reservation in New Mexico and moved to Alaska because her husband got a job. And then while she was out there, wrote this beautiful book called Ceremony, which contends with Blood Meridian, honestly, is the best Southwestern book. And she was inspired to do that because of the distance. So I think that's what Suttree is. And it gives it that edge. It gives it a little bit of the aggression we see in Blood Meridian. And McCarthy in 1974 got into the occult. So a lot of these occult elements, because I read some earlier drafts of Suttree, were added at the end. And it gives it that layering. It gives it some of that mystical feel that we see in Blood Meridian that we hold on to so much. And it's still a toss-up in my mind. Honestly, just saying it here, like I said, I did a very thorough video on it, and it was a tiebreaker. But let's now move to a wild card pick. And I think this may grow over time. But the Passenger Stella Mars package, is it better than Blood Meridian? Because I kind of feel like they were released separately as maybe a ploy for more money. But let's just view them as one novel because, and when combined together, they're probably a bit longer than Blood Meridian and The Crossing. But a lot of people judge The Passenger on the first 100 pages or so. But once things start picking up, I think that Bobby's journey surpasses Suttree. I think that the knowledge Cormac is dropping and the stories that are being told and some of the wisdom being given to us matches The Crossing. I think Bobby Western as a character is as strong as any other character that Cormac ever writes. The nature passages are there. We visit the South. We visit the Southwest. We visit the West. We go to Europe. It has, one could say, the best love story of any Cormac McCarthy novel. The only rival it really has is Alejandra in All the Pretty Horses. And that one was kind of premature and fast and didn't really have too much depth to it. And McCarthy kind of dances around Alicia and Bobby's relationship, but it for sure is much better and much more interesting. We also have the whole supernatural and mental health aspect, because a lot of the times Cormac is into the supernatural, but it's veiled in the symbolic. And in Blood Meridian, at the end, it's kind of opened up, and then with the judge's supernatural strength and the parts of his identity and soul are supernatural. But in Blood Meridian, we're getting it in totality, and we're also dealing with mental health. And the characterization of the passenger is either Bobby going crazy and becoming a schizophrenic himself, manifesting the thalidomide kid and whatnot on the beach, or he is heading towards some form of enlightenment, some form of realization, and that it hits a deep rapture at the end. And the more I read The Passenger and think about it, I'm thinking it's maybe going to be remembered as his best. He was writing it during his peak. He was doing it at this time, and it was meant for something. I can't totally tell you what that is yet. I'm doing a deep dive into it for the Cormac McCarthy course. Everyone go sign up. We're doing free daily discussions. I'm starting to post free videos over there. So go hop on. Link down in the description below. I would love to see you guys over there. It's very hard for me to keep up with the YouTube comments here because I get anyway from 35 to even 100 a day if one of my videos does really well. But over there, I really want to develop more of a niche community and respond to people. And you can post massive blocks of text that you can't do here. And obviously Substack won't censor you. But anyway, as I'm starting to deep dive Stella Maris and preparing longer form videos on it for the course, I'm starting to see and try to put together all the connections. And it's going to take time and research because I'm not currently intelligent enough and other people have put it together. But to understand it yourself requires knowledge of mathematics and other things that I'm learning as I go. So the passenger isn't there yet, but I think over the course of time, it may be remembered as one of his greatest works. And it would be sad if he released anything posthumously that would then be called his last work, because if it just ends here, I think it will just gain power over time, because right now there's this phase for Blood Meridian and there's these Blood Meridian bros, but the future can rewrite itself. Someone wants to adapt The Passenger. I forget the director's name, but he wants to do a long form series on the Passenger and Stella Maris on a major streaming platform, and I think that would do great. He's someone who's really into like psychological dramatic series. And so something like that, a successful Cormac McCarthy movie, because we saw Oprah and the movie adaptation boost up the road. We saw the Coen brothers obviously boost up No Country for Old Men, but that was 15 years ago. What if someone reached the broader audience in the streaming service world? That could be massive, because a lot of people saw No Country for Old Men. Probably a lot of people read The Road. But making an iconic piece, something like The Wire, The Sopranos, A Deadwood, if they could hit that quality and hit their stride with something of McCarthy's, which is totally possible and it has the power in it, with just a good adapter and a good director, then I think it could build a major legacy. So what do you guys think? What is your favorite Cormac McCarthy novel? What do you think beats out Blood Meridian is what I should ask. Is it at the top? And if you say it's at the top, tell me why. And if you want to tell me why in greater depth and rank Cormac McCarthy's Western novels, I'm going to put a link down in the description below, because that is the conversation we are having today over on the Cormac McCarthy course, and you can join us for free.